Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Dave Ribeiro from SteelersSanctuary.com. And today we've got Tony Serino back with us. Tony, how you doing?
Doing good. Happy to be back with you.
Excellent. Glad to have you back, bro. It's a slow news time in Steelers land, but we can always depend on Antonio Brown to give us some content to keep it going. I thought we'd lead off with this. I mean, everyone knows this by now. His team, the Albany Empire, gets kicked out of the Arena League, and now he's being sued by the players and coach for taking back money he paid for them for their last paycheck.
Wow.
You didn't hear that part?
I did not hear that last part. I knew that his team got taken away, but I did not hear that he's getting sued because he withheld their check, or
apparently, from what I read, he paid it, then he canceled payment on all the checks.
Oh.
So they had it and they didn't have it.
Yeah, that's bad.
I mean, who knew this would go bad, right? I mean,
well, yeah,
ultimately,
of course, right? As soon as you see that, yeah, Antonio Brown is going to buy a football team. I mean, it's just your mind only goes to the plenty of ways that this could go poorly. This is probably the worst case scenario now, but yeah, not good.
What a train wreck. I mean,
yeah.
he simply cannot stay out of trouble, out of it. It's amazing. I'm almost speechless at this point that they would actually, the Arena League would actually allow him to own a franchise, first of all.
And then look, for them, well, let's stop there though, because for them, this is a publicity thing. Yeah. I mean, this is just about getting your name out there. I believe the Arena Football League was one of the leagues that was affected big by COVID, right? In fact, I think they shut down.
They did.
And they had to get purchased by some other company to even restart again. So yeah, I mean, for them, like Antonio Brown wants to buy a team, they're going to ignore everything we know about Antonio Brown. And then, the fact that this is not going to end well, and they're just going to want to believe well, this could be something that gets us on SportsCenter and maybe, drives tickets and that kind of thing.
Yeah. What's the end game for Antonio Brown? What ends up, he's destined to be in jail or God forbid worse, right?
Yeah. Nothing.
It's just so sad.
Nothing good's going to come of this. No. And it's unfortunate. Bill Simmons used to have this phrase. He called it the Tyson zone, which is, Mike Tyson got to a point where you could literally any headline that was written about Mike Tyson, you could believe it, right? I mean, it could literally say anything and you'd be like, yeah, it's probably that could be the case. And I think we have gotten into the Tyson zone with Antonio Brown, right? I mean, is there any tweet that you could read tomorrow that would genuinely shock you about something Antonio Brown did or said?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, he passed Mike Tyson years ago. He's in his own zone now. He's officially got his own zone. I mean, when you think of all the things he's pulled since he left Pittsburgh, it's probably remarkable that he's not in jail at this point. I don't know.
And it kind of, again, and it goes back to his time in Pittsburgh where it's knowing who he was. And again, people say he changed after the perfect hit and all of that. I mean, Ryan Clark tells stories about him early in his career where he was still, maybe not to the level he is today, but still, a handful to deal with. The fact that the Steelers and Mike Tomlin kept that all under wraps and kept him, the guy had, I forget the number, 5 or 6 genuinely great, with a capital G, great seasons for this team. And the pity of that time is that this team didn't do more with the talent that he had and injuries and all that. But the fact that he wasn't at the time, when you go back to his time as the Steelers, what was the most egregious Antonio Brown incident? It was the throwing the Gatorade bottle on the sideline, right? I mean, Antonio Brown throwing a Gatorade bottle is,
I know, right? At this point,
right? I mean, it's nothing.
You look back at that and you're like, gee, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Is he a Hall of Famer in your eyes? See, to me,
I don't think he is.
He is. I think he is.
Do you think he is?
There was no more. He was the dominant receiver for, like you said, 5-6 years in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the end playing with Tampa, he was still really on top,
Yeah.
I think he did enough. I mean, I think the off-field stuff's going to keep him out probably for a long time. He's definitely not going to be a first ballot or anything like that.
No.
But on the field, I think he's done enough to get in.
he would. I want to look up his numbers next to Terrell Davis, because Terrell Davis is the one guy who I don't think had a long enough career to deserve it, but they still gave it to him because he had that 2,000-yard season.
And the Super Bowl too, right?
And that Super Bowl, yeah. And so Antonio, it's like, look, he had like I forget the number. It's like 5 or 6, like legitimately great years. He had the Super Bowl with Tampa. Obviously, like you said, the off the field stuff. I mean, he won't even get in the Steelers Ring of Honor for a while.
I don't think ever. I don't know about ever.
Oh, you don't think
as long as
ever.
the Rooney's on it.
There's no chance that he could reconcile.
Oh, man, he'd have to change. He'd have to do a complete change of character at this point.
Yeah.
And start, showing some remorse for the stuff he's done. I don't see that ever happening.
But see,
the Rooney's are so conservative.
Right. And so, I mean, I don't think he gets in the ring. He's not going to get in the Steelers Ring of Honor for a while. And I think, like you said, the Hall of Fame, like, who's more deserving, considering the off the field stuff, for the Hall of Fame, Hines Ward or Antonio Brown?
Wow.
Because I think if you polled Steeler fans right now and said who was a better Steeler, Antonio Brown or Hines Ward, I think that that would be way closer than it should be, because it should be like 90-10 Antonio. But I think that would be way closer to like 50-50.
We did a pod about the top 10 Steelers wide receivers of all time. Mm-hmm. And I got so much blowback because I didn't put Antonio Brown number 1. And I didn't see that coming for anything. I thought everyone in Pittsburgh hated him, but people were killing me.
Really?
Because I put
as the number Swan 1 wide receiver in Steeler history, above Swan or Stallworth?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put him above Swan or Stallworth. I wouldn't put him above either.
I had him above Stallworth.
Yeah, I would put Swan and Stallworth both above him.
Yeah.
Longevity is a big deal. And again, those guys won 4 Super Bowls between the 8 Super Bowls.
In an era where they didn't throw the ball that much. So
right.
Yeah, I think that might be a little recency bias. I think a lot of those people that did come at me a little bit were on the younger side and don't really know.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I didn't expect it because, I thought he was like universally hated in Pittsburgh, but apparently not from some of the comments I got. But yeah, I think ultimately, because for the Hall of Fame, I don't think he has to fix his image. I think he can still this is football. This is a lot of, let's face it, there's some dirtbags in the Hall of Fame, but
he has to stay out of stuff like this for a little while. I mean, he's got to be quiet for a little bit if he wants to get in. Yeah. All
right, let's move on to some real Steelers news. There isn't much. Anthony Miller got cut last week, which was kind of a surprise. It's not even training camp yet. They didn't even give him a chance to compete in training camp. And the Steelers signed Nick Kwiatkowski. I don't know. I'm butchering that name.
I think it's Kwiatkowski. I think it's how
Kwiatkowski. Thank you.
But I'm terrible on pronunciation, so you should not.
Yeah, I am too. I butcher some names. I think the big news here is they signed a long snapper also, but the big news is the inside linebacker position. I think they're still concerned about that position. Still looking because if you look at it, Tony, it's bad. I mean, you've got Cole Holcomb still not 100% healthy. Orlando Roberts is solid, but not really spectacular. And then Mark Robinson, who they're saying isn't ready till 2024. And Austin was quoted as saying that. And then you got Tanner Muse, who's not even a linebacker.
Yep.
Yeah. And now this Kwiatkowski, it's not a stellar group.
No, it's not. But I mean, look, this is a complete remake of the position. So, I mean, you're talking about the only guy who was on the team a year ago from this group is Mark Robinson. Right. Yep. And again,
which is crazy.
Even Terrell Austin's saying, project. I mean, he saw some time next year and project, he'll compete for a starting role in 2024, but I think he'll get some playing time this year. Although with Kwiatkowski coming on, it does give the Steelers now, assuming Cole Holcomb can be healthy, right? And again, we're still in June, so he's got another month, 2 months to really heal up. But assuming that he finds some health there, this does give the Steelers 3 guys who you'd be okay if they're on the field. Now, if we're doing a ranking of where this linebacker group fits, even in their own division, I think you would probably have to put the Steelers as the 4th best inside linebacker group in the division. But then, at the end of last year, let's say that we're bringing back Devin Bush and the guy from Jacksonville that I'm going to forget his name, Miles Jack. Let's say that was still the group. Let's say the group. Actually, which group would you rather have? The group they have today or the group that they had last year?
I was going to ask you that next. Are they better this now than they were last year? And I don't know.
I don't know either, but they're different. And I think different has the possibility to be better. And I'm okay with that.
They were more athletic last year with Miles Jack and Devin Bush.
Were they though? Okay, because
Miles Jack was never healthy, unfortunately. They would have been.
And then
he's still not signed, right?
Athleticism only goes so far when you can't process.
Yeah.
So
true.
The guy I'm most excited about the position right now is Landon Roberts. I think Landon Roberts is going to be, I think Landon Roberts, especially from a run defense perspective, see ball, get ball type player, big hitter. I think Steelers fans are going to love him. I think he, to me, is the guy who's most exciting. I worry about Holcomb because I just think the Steelers believe that he can be more of a coverage linebacker than he's ever shown to be in his career. And that could be a real, this could be a Robert Spillane situation where it's like, guys, what are we doing? Like, this guy's not a coverage linebacker. And then, Quiet Kowski's going to be the third guy. So, it's.
Yeah. I'm concerned about Holcomb too, as if it was a Landon Roberts and a healthy Miles Jack.
Yeah.
I think I'd feel better, or someone in that ilk. Yeah. They're asking Cole Holcomb to do something he's never done. And coming off major surgery on top of that, it's a little bit of a risk. I think smart coaches are going to take advantage of the inside linebackers in coverage, do some play action, make them, spread them out.
But this team hasn't had good inside linebackers since Ryan Shazier, right? In 2017, right?
Oh God, it's been a black hole. It really has. There's no other way to put it. It's just
It's like, is Mark Barron the best linebacker the Steelers have had?
Wow.
But the Steelers have had good defenses since then, right? I mean, I think you go back to the 2019, 2020 teams. They were excellent. I think with the Steelers, they showed signs of it last year. They did that with poor play overall at the linebacker spot. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not like this position is going to really, like, this team, this position might hold them back from being truly great, like top 5, making this team a contender type. But I don't think this, I don't think this is the difference between playoffs and not playoffs is the inside linebacker position right now.
Agreed. 2 more draft picks got signed this week, Keanu Benton and Broderick Jones. The lone holdout is Joey Porter Jr. Dave and I kicked this around a little bit. That 32 pick is going to be tricky, right? Because I'm sure he's fighting for first round money.
Yep.
And I'm sure the Steelers are saying you weren't first round, you were second round, even though you were 32nd overall. It gets done eventually, but this one might take a while. Yeah,
it'll get done before camp, right? Because I mean, like, Omar Khan's the GM, so he basically gets to call his own. He is the money guy, and he gets to call his own shot now.
Yeah,
I think from what I've read, based on the couple contracts I've seen, the Steelers are giving out more guaranteed years in the deal.
It does seem that. Yeah.
So maybe it's not going to be as hard for Joe. I mean, like, Joey Porter ends up being the 32nd pick in the draft, which he will argue is a first round pick.
Yep.
He obviously was not a first round pick. He was picked in the second round. So so like you said, there's going to be a squabble there. But I would imagine, look, I think at the end of the day, there's no chance Joey Porter misses a day of training camp because of his contract situation.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Those days are gone, right? They're all slotted. They're arguing over, minutia, really.
Exactly.
Like, I remember growing up, there was some long contract holdouts, like in the 80s and 90s. First round picks would hold out forever. And the Steelers in particular would hard line as they always are.
Yep.
It was always a soap opera trying to get them signed.
But they're less hard line nowadays. I mean, you have to give, it's kind of crazy that Omar Khan, the finance guy, you would have thought he's going to be real hard line about this stuff, right? Because it's all about cap manipulation and whatnot. For him, it's like, I'm not going to be hard line. I mean, maybe he'll have the stuff that he is hard line about, but certainly like the guaranteed deals and the stuff that we've seen the Steelers be, or the guaranteed years, then the things that the Steelers have been more kind of hard line about in the past, he's maybe not the same.
Yeah. And you make a good point where he's the finance guy. So he's already comfortable at what he wants to spend and how he wants to structure deals. So it's a little easier. So streamlined, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Of all the Steelers draft picks, who makes the biggest impact in year one, you think? I threw this out on Twitter the other day. I have my.
That's a really good question, because I argue with Steeler fans a lot about this. I get Steeler fans messaging me all the time of like, this draft was so good, they're going to make the playoffs now. they could be contenders now. And I keep pushing back of like, this draft is very good, but probably very good 3-4 years from now when these guys start to develop, because you got a lot of raw players in this draft. And the guy I'm even going to say is going to be, he's a pretty raw player too, but I'll say Darnell Washington to me makes the most sense of having like the biggest impact right away, because as a blocker in 12 personnel, I just don't see any way that Gentry is going to be able to get on the field before him, unless his route running is just awful and you can't trust him at all in that way. But otherwise, I think
there's been some good things said about his route running too, though, right? I mean, I've seen a few good tweets about he's coming along, he's improving in the route running area. Yeah, Gentry might be long for this roster if they decide to go with Hayward as the third tight end, call him the third tight end, and then
but they cut Watt, so they have room now to keep. I think they keep 4 tight ends, and they keep Hayward in the Watt role from last year, so they can make a roster spot for him.
Yeah. I can see that. My biggest impact guy was.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I have a sleeper here, but I want to hear yours first, and I'll tell you my sleeper.
I think it's Keanu Benton. Okay. I'm getting, the more I hear about him, the higher I'm getting on him, and he's going to start as a nose tackle, I would assume, right off the bat. And man, people are saying some good things about him already. Some of the players, I'm intrigued. I can't wait to see him in like preseason to see how he does.
They need a player like that so badly. You know, they need a young, good D lineman. We've been talking about this since Stephon Tuitt took the year off. We've been talking about this.
Yep.
That was like 3 years ago. So for them to finally, think about the guys who have come through the door since then, like the Isaiah Buggs, the Loudermilks of the world. Who knows what they're going to do with the Marvin Leal. They've really, we've just been waiting for the next, young Steeler D lineman to come in and make an impact. And for Benton, look, it is going to be a little bit tough for him to get on the field in sub package. I mean, you talk about him as a nose tackle, and we'll see how much base they use this year. In sub package football, I mean, Ogunjobi and Hayward, and I would imagine Leal are all going to have the inside track there. So he's going to kind of be fourth guy off the bench, but even still, in the amount of, we know that depth matters at that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
do we even know what they're going to do with Leal? Is he going to be outside linebacker-ish? Is he going to be? They're going to use him in that big run stopping package where he's the outside linebacker, in that deal, or you get these mixed messages, and it's starting to get a little concerning. Like it's, he's good at a lot of things, but not great at any one thing. He doesn't have a position. That's a little scary. It's Sean Davis-ish. I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, but
I mean, look,
it's heading down that road.
It a little bit, it'd be interesting because Tomlin has talked more and more. Tomlin used to be a jack of all trades guy, right? He liked position flexibility, loved guys who are, you can move all around and that kind of thing, right? Because you can keep defenses off balance. But he's been talking more and more recently about specialty guys, right? Guys who you can really, it's becoming a specialized game where you have this situation where you need this type of player for this situation. And I think Leal may end up being we've talked about a lot of having like the pass rush guy who can come in and pass rush downs and take some breather, either give a breather to guys like Cam on the inside or TJ. And it used to be Bud and now it's Alex on the outside. And I think that's probably more where Leal fits, right? Is like if Leal just ends up being like a specialty pass rusher in that, in that kind of Tomlin mold of like, I want specialty type players. I thought Leal's pass rush moves, even in going back to preseason last year, were really, really good. And you wonder how much he's going to evolve year 1 to year 2. If that's all he ends up being, I think that can be fine. I mean, you'd like for him to turn out to be better than that because he was a 3rd round pick, but I think we know how much the Steelers have missed that at times, right? You go back to when TJ went out last year and how hard it was for this team to generate pressure and that kind of thing. And so the more guys you can put on the field, like Leal, who specialize in that, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. Who was your sleeper?
Corey Trice.
Man, I'm all aboard the Corey Trice train. I hope the kid can stay healthy and show some things because that could be the steal of the draft, really, if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean he's like the more polished-ish version of Joey Porter. His numbers at Purdue are just as good as Joey's. He just has this knee problem where teams don't think he can last in the league for 5 years. But it would be kind of shocking to me for him to beat out Joey Porter, which is why it's hard for me to say like he's going to have the most impact, because how is he going to get on the field before Joey Porter does? Like, you're going to put your 7th round corner on the field before you put your 1st round corner on the field. Yeah, it's impossible.
Not likely.
Right?
No.
It's not likely. But
a whole lot would have to go wrong with Joey Porter.
Exactly.
Trice
exactly. But does Trice beat out James Pierre for that last roster spot? That wouldn't shock me.
Oh, that wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah. I think he's got a really good shot at making the roster for sure. And then, how it falls out, are they going to use Patrick Peterson in the slot and start, Joey Porter, and then the other side, somebody gets injured? There's a lot of moving parts in the secondary that could, what do you think about the whole slot position thing while we're on that subject real quick?
Slot corner?
Yeah.
Every
Steelers fan's like, just throw your hands up.
Whatever. Here's the thing. We went from watching Arthur Mollett, and that they got to upgrade from this position. And I don't even know if they have a player on the team right now who's Arthur Mollett level nickel corner, but whatever. I mean,
how scary is that sentence that you just said right there?
Yeah.
And
I have no idea what they're going to do at this position. Zero idea. And I don't know if they know. It sounds like Mollett wasn't happy with whatever direction like they were going to go. I think he wanted more money, and they're like, the Steelers just said no. Yeah. So they had to let him go. But it's not like it's not like letting him go meant, okay, well, we got to go make some kind of move here, because that was a draft day type thing. Because that the same day they signed the Chandler Sullivan or whatever his name is, the guy from Minnesota that seems to have the inside track. I don't know if you've seen it, Chandler Sullivan tape or looked at his numbers, but
I just know he had a terrible season last year. I'm aware of that. The PFF score
was not good.
I mean, Omar Khan mentioned Duke Dawson in one of the interviews, like when they asked him about slot corner, and I'm like, I really think they plan to put Patrick Peterson in the slot a lot. Maybe start him against 2 wide receiver sets on the outside, and then when teams spread them out, move them inside. Tomlin's talked about this, is his flexibility, and his this and that, and who knows? But it's I don't know. I mean, like that. I don't know. I mean, it depends on what kind of coverages they're going to play. If they're going to play too high that way, I guess that's fine. I mean, I just don't want I'd probably rather have Patrick Peterson living in a world where the Steelers are going to run more too high and he's going to play in the slot, rather than having them play in a single high situation where Patrick Peterson is going to have to play with a third of the field to himself. I would probably rather him be in the slot, because if you go back, I mean, you go back to what he did in Minnesota last year. A lot of it was zone defense, where he's still really good at reading the quarterback's eyes and that kind of thing. Man, when this guy has to go up one-on-one, this division is getting a little better from a wide receiver perspective outside of Cincinnati. You look at what Cleveland got, and you look at what Baltimore got. I mean, Baltimore's wide receiver core is still a joke, but it's less of a joke now than it was in years past. I don't want. I mean, is there a number one receiver on any of those teams that you want Pat Pete covering by himself without safety help? No. And especially when they go into Cincinnati, I don't want him covering any one of the three.
I mean, cover 2, cover 4 all day, and make Joe Burrow beat you down the field. That's the only way to play that game.
Yeah, that's the only way to play Cincinnati. I mean, you're talking about either a rookie corner or 33-year-old Patrick Peterson trying to cover one of the 3, and it's just no, thank you. Let's play zone. Let's play zone. PFF came up with the rankings. They ranked all 32 teams, 1 through 32. Did you see the list?
I have not seen the list, and this is exciting.
Do you want to venture a guess of where the Steelers landed?
Sure. They've actually been kind to the Steelers this offseason.
They have been unusually kind.
So last I checked, I believe Vegas had the Steelers around in the high 20s or the low 20s. I guess you would say 21, 20. Yeah. So I would guess PFF's gonna have some. I'll say 19 is where I think that they have the Steelers. Pretty good guess,
Tony. 17th overall.
Woo!
17th overall.
Okay, so like I said, they've been nicer.
No, not bad.
They've been nicer.
Yeah. Well, 4th in the AFC North.
Okay.
All three AFC North teams ahead of them. 10th in the AFC overall. So that's well outside the playoff bubble, according to PFF. I mean,
interesting.
Let me bring up the list real quick. Some of the Cleveland Browns were ahead of them. I'm not so sure about that.
The Browns being ahead is just based on the Deshaun Watson can't be that bad hype. And that's all it is. You know, I mean, like you talked to, well, because even, I mean, Browns fans are convincing themselves they're a Super Bowl contender this year. That's what the Browns fans
they have to be, right? Because that cap is gonna get them at some point, and this has to be the year. I'll just do the AFC teams. Obviously, Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, Jets were 6th overall.
Jets are too high.
A lot of I agree. I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I think that's a little too high. Chargers are at 8, Browns at 9, Ravens 10, Dolphins 11, Jaguars 12, and then the Steelers are the next AFC team at 17.
Interesting. So I don't necessarily disagree that the Steelers are quote unquote worse than any of those teams, but I think some of those teams are going to fall back down to earth. I think Jets are one of those teams. I mean, someone out of the South has to make it. So sure, put the Jaguars there. That's fine. I think the Dolphins are probably going to end up being like the 3rd best team in the AFC, but that's a different topic. I thought they were a sleeping giant last year if Tua could stay healthy. I mean, look, the Steelers, you know, we've talked about this before, right? I mean, they're not putting together like the sexy type of roster. So it's very easy for teams to look at this team and go, yeah, you know, they're fine. I mean, they're not going to be bad, but they're not, you know, they don't scare me. You know, they're not a team. Like if you're a Browns fan right now, you're saying, I'm not scared by the Steelers. And I understand why PFF is going to, you know, basically think the same thing about this team, which is like, look, they're fine, but are they really going to be in the AFC playoff hunt? Maybe on the outside, but not necessarily. The problem is when games start being played, right? There's some of those teams you mentioned, right? The Jets, the Browns. When these games start getting close at the end, those teams every year choke it away. And you're not going to convince me that, like, I'm pretty much all in on the fact that this Steelers team this year is making the playoffs. Like, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win 10 games.
You think so?
They are making the playoffs this year. Yeah, because like Mike Tomlin has proven that he has a winning formula, which is like, we can grind you out. And at the end of games, I'll just win because you're an idiot and I'm not at the end of these games. And I guess playing itself out for so many years. Like, if this team gets any kind of jump from Kenny and Najee's not a complete disaster in the running game, I think this team's going to win 10 games this year.
We went through their schedule, and it's always tricky this early to go through the schedule. It seems at this point to be very, very easy. A very, very easy schedule. And I was having a hard time like finding legit losses on that schedule. But then I look at the rest of the AFC, and I think the Jets are rated too high, but that team's so good. If they get 80% of Aaron Rodgers peak, they're making the playoffs because that team's loaded. Defense, they're good. They've got wide receivers. They've got running backs. They've got it all. The Browns, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced of them at all.
No.
But that's one team they could jump. Could you make an argument? Yeah, like you said, somebody's got to win the South, right? So the Jaguars or fill in the blank are going to win the division. The Dolphins, Tua scares me. I like their talent.
Yeah.
But Tua scares me.
Tua has to stay healthy for that thing to work. But man, when he was healthy, that team was people don't. I mean, they were a sleeping giant. The team that there's two. I'll give you two teams that could fall back down. Well, one team that I think is going to fall back down, and it reminded me that I probably need to go bet the under on their win total because it's probably like 11.5, and that's insane. Buffalo. I think Buffalo is coming flying back down to earth.
Boy,
they're Charmin soft. We saw that in the playoff game. They rely so much on Josh Allen. When Von Miller went down, they had absolutely no pass rush whatsoever. They still don't have a running game. Stephon Diggs is he still holding out? I saw today he's pointing the finger at Josh Allen as why he's not happy. He's not getting along with Josh Allen. So that's a disaster just waiting to happen in Buffalo. Yeah.
That's too bad too because they've been so close, but it's the AFC is just a gauntlet. Just a gauntlet of good teams with good quarterbacks. I'm also suspicious.
It was that way that year. It was that way last year too, though. And it was like, oh, they got Russell Wilson now. Remember, Devontae Adams was in Vegas. There was all kinds of like,
true.
everybody's going to be good.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
the Steelers
you're
finished
right.
8th in the AFC last year.
You're right. I had forgotten about that. All the hype about Denver, the whole AFC West, right, was like going to be unbelievable.
Yeah. So everybody's a monster now. Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical of this new 80s, 90s offense that Mike Tomlin is dying to run here. I don't, I'm going to win with my defense, and we're going to be conservative. Did you read the Cavoli article on Matt Canada?
Yeah.
Now already Matt Canada's trying to CYA his ass for this season.
Yeah. He's like, this is
being forced upon me. Yeah. Things could get interesting there. I'm not sold on this offense whatsoever.
What was his exact quote? What was the exact quote? Because it wasn't like, he wouldn't say it was forced, but it was like, I don't run the show, or I don't run the whole show, or something like that.
He said something like, there's a philosophy that comes from the owner through the coach to me, or something along those lines.
That's right. It was like, he said this philosophy doesn't come from me. Yeah. It's not a shock. I mean, we're not, it is confirmation of what we already knew.
We've wondered that, the two of us on this podcast a couple times, how much of this is being forced upon Matt Canada. I mean, I don't think he's above blame by any means, but I think once Ben Roethlisberger retired, Mike Tomlin said, all right, this is my team. I'm going to win my way.
Right.
This is the way we're going to do things. And if it was 1989, I'd be super excited.
I hang my hat on this every time we talk about this, but like the Steelers look, they're not pretty. You wouldn't want, if you're going to start a team from scratch, you wouldn't want to start it like the way the Steelers are doing, but at least give them credit for like, they have a thesis, they are trying it. And in the second half of last season, when this team went 7-2 down the stretch, the offense, even from an analytical perspective, right? If you look at like the advanced numbers, DVOA and EPA per play, the offense was really, really efficient and really good at the end of last year. Even if, they didn't put any points on the board, they were a disaster in the red zone. But if you're telling me, but if you're telling me like they're going to start like, and again, we're talking about how young they were. If they start there, if that's the baseline for what they could be this year, and they just have to be better in the red zone, I can be okay with that. Look, they're not going to win games. The shootouts they get in where it's going to be 35-30, they're going to lose those games. But if games
there's not going to be any shootouts 35-30. It's going to be 35-10.
Right.
Those games are going to be bad.
But if
I get your point.
If the Steelers can play games in the low 20s, I mean, that's their game. And I think that they can win games. They can win games like 27-17, stuff like that, right? Where they're not scoring 30 a game, but like you get enough points, you get some turnovers in there. It becomes a real pain in the ass for other defenses who are not facing teams like this on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. But then it's kind of a simple solution, right? Load the box, stop the run. Well, the Steelers did it. The Ravens killed them with the run game the first time. The second game, they're like, all right, we're going to load the box. We're not going to let you do that.
Well, then the Steelers will just throw. Look, you load the box, and that's fine, right? Because this team's not. I mean, even Ben, when it was at the end and it was bad. I mean, this team's not afraid to throw deep. It just wasn't creative. But if you're going to load the box and it's going to be a one-on-one, I like the Steelers one-on-one guys more today than I did. Like if we're talking about the Steelers back in the COVID year and the year after, would you rather have Deontay and I think it was just Claypool at the time versus the team they have now, which is okay. Deontay is what it is, but they have Allen Robinson and Pickens now. I'd rather have that. If you're going to tell me like, oh, we're just going to load the box and dare you to beat us deep, like. Yeah, if you're going to give me one-on-ones to Allen Robinson and George Pickens all day, let's sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to Kenny Pickett, right? If he can become the Kenny Pickett we saw against, the Raiders and the Ravens, where he's pulling plays out, at the end of the game, it's going to be, the margin for error is going to be small. He's going to have to be good in the fourth quarter, good in the red zone, very good in the red zone. And then I guess there's an equation where they're very good, but I don't know. It seems tough to me.
It's not
Tony.
Easy.
I'm going to be. We're in year 4 of this. I've had it. I watched the Chiefs.
Wait, what?
I watched
you
the
can't
49ers.
be done now. No. You're too early to jump off
offense.
We're just getting started. I mean, this is like Like,
Tony, when was the last time the Steelers had an entertaining offensive football team? It's been
well, maybe 2023. I
I
mean, if they go back to running the ball, if they're as good at running the ball as they were at the end of last season, and Kenny takes a leap, I think they're going to be fine. I don't think we're going to be worried about the offense. The question here, though, is can Kenny make a big? I mean, he's got to make a pretty big leap, especially in structure. Kenny was a freaking disaster in structure last year.
He kind of was. You're right.
There were glimpses and moments of it, like that throw to Sims down the middle against Baltimore, right? But like when you and I can name on one hand the kinds of the big throws he made in structure, it's a pretty big leap that you're asking him to make year over year. If you can do that, I think this offense is fine, and I think even you will be happy with it. But man, if he doesn't, it is going to be as ugly as you think it's going to be, because then teams are going to load the box, and the Steelers aren't going to have an answer for it.
Yeah, and again, Matt Canada, creative is not one of the words you think of when we talk about Matt Canada. It's pretty predictable, which puts more pressure on Kenny Pickett, I think, to be very good and take a big leap like you talked about. We'll see. I mean, I don't want to be that guy. I'd rather have wins than be pretty. Obviously, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm 52 years old. I'm old school as they come.
Yeah,
but if you're going to be 8-8, 9-7, at least entertain me somewhat. Give me something. Hopefully,
but I think the upside, the upside of this thing is I don't think it's like 9-8, right? I mean, if the Steelers end up if the thesis all comes together, and you are the Zag team in a world where like everybody's trying to be go crazy, you have a defense that can shut that down for the most part. Right now, you might allow one or two teams to light you up, but generally speaking, you are shutting those kind of teams down through defense and running the football and eating clock. Like I look, I'm gonna sound crazy to say this. It wouldn't shock me if this team got like the 2 seed in 2024.
Oh, in 2024.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, like 2 years from now. I think legit contender 2024, 2025 is not out. Like the Steelers are the 49ers of the AFC in a year from now.
This is a world without Matt Canada, right? We're moving on from Matt Canada.
Yeah, I mean, well, unfortunately, as Matt has said himself, does it really matter? What do you ask?
I mean, it's the circle we go in. It's like it's Matt Canada, it's Kenny Pickett, it's Mike Tomlin, it's Matt Canada, it's Mike. It's if there's a new coordinator, is Mike Tomlin going to let them call their plays, or is he going to want this as is? Conservative. Short passing game, run the ball. We'll see. I do agree with you though. 2024, 2025, with Kenny Pickett with a few years under his belt, George Pickens a few years under his belt. Maybe add one more playmaker somewhere along the line. Maybe Calvin Austin becomes that guy. Maybe.
Well, I don't know about Calvin Austin. By the way, the Calvin Austin thing. Look, it's so funny when Anthony Miller got cut, and everyone's like, "Oh man, this must mean that they love Calvin Austin. Like they had to cut Anthony Miller because of that." No, they love Allen Robinson.
I was just going to say that, dude. You're
reading
my mind today.
It's so clear.
They love Allen Robinson, veteran guy, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah, they don't need Anthony Miller. They don't need Anthony Miller. There's nothing he's going to do for this team. No.
Nothing.
One other thing to say about the offense. One other thing to say about the offense. You and I were both big Keith Butler haters. Big time.
Yes, we were.
Now, they eventually figured it out. That's why I'm not worried about the offense, because eventually, maybe they just figure this shit out. Like
it's a great analogy. It took them about 6 years of the Keith Butler style,
right?
Before they finally, I guess.
And we're year 4 of this, so
yeah. I think the 2 tight end set could be interesting with Washington and Muth. That could be. Yes. That's my one hope. That could be really interesting. Those 2 guys, especially Muth, in the passing game. He could, he could be on I think the sky's the limit for him. If Kenny Pickett plays well, he could be one of the top tight ends in the league.
Yes.
And that'd be something to hang your hat on for sure.
Yes.
Speaking of the running game and Najee Harris, this is kind of a future thing, but do they pick up his 5th-year option next year? Do you think, I don't know. It's going to be about 11. It's $10 million this year, so it's going to be about 11-ish, 12-ish by the time his 5th-year option comes up. Let me phrase it this way. Would you pick up the fifth year option?
I am on record as saying that I do not believe Najee Harris will be the starting running back by the end of the season.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm all in on Jaylen Warren.
All right.
Yeah. No. I look. I think you look at, especially what I forgot is that Steel running backs do go through this kind of year 1 to year 2 physiological change, right? Where they're like their physique gets a lot better. You saw. I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture of Jaylen Warren in minicamp, but the dude looks built.
Yes.
I'm all in on Warren. I'm all in on Warren as being look, I think you and I have talked about the problems of Najee Harris in the past.
Yeah.
Najee Harris is not a big play guy. We have 2 years of sample size. We also have Jaylen Warren in that exact same offense, having more big plays than Najee's had, behind the same offensive line in the same offense. And the hardest part for me is, do I actually believe that Mike Tomlin, because he likes Najee so much, Najee's a leader, all of that, first round pick, do I actually believe that there's a chance that he could actually pull the trigger on this? And the answer is, I think there is, yes, because he almost did it at the bye week last year.
Yeah, you're right.
They were close.
Yeah.
And then Najee started playing better. But again, my biggest worry about this offense right now is not Kenny Pickett, it's Najee Harris. And I think a Jaylen Warren in year 2, where he's gone through a true body transformation and can get kind of even more explosive, I think Jaylen Warren is going to be the kind of player that you can't deny. Go back to Mike Wallace versus Antonio Brown. Mike Wallace, third round pick in his rookie year. He set the record for yards per catch and that kind of thing, or he led the league in it. But it was Antonio Brown over time who said, no, I am better than Mike Wallace, and you have to admit that to yourself, even though I'm a 6th round pick and he was a 3rd round pick. And I think Jaylen Warren's going to be doing the same thing to Najee.
Wow, I hadn't even considered that, to be honest with you, because I just think, first, I think you're right. I think Jaylen Warren has that potential. I definitely think that. I just think Mike Tomlin wants Najee Harris to succeed. So he loves Najee Harris. Everything about, we keep hearing about the leadership stuff and this and that, and he's just not, he's not explosive enough. They need someone to break big plays, and he's not it. Jaylen Warren could be it, but he's not the guy. I mean, even catching passes out of the backfield, we've seen some good plays from Najee out of the backfield, but for the most part, he's an under 4 yards a carry guy. He is what he is. He's a big bruising back that doesn't really break anything for you. He adds nothing exciting to this offense. It's just,
it's the problem. He's the biggest impediment to Mike Tomlin being the offense that he wants to be, which is, look, if you're going to be a running game, you still need big plays. And you can't, look, Najee Harris is a 4 yard per carry guy because he is incapable at this point in his career of breaking big plays at a rate of anyone else in his class. I mean, if you look at the number of 10+ yard runs that Najee's had in comparison to when Steeler fans want to tell me that Najee is going to end up being a top 5 or top 10 back, I always go back to them and say, look, go look at any top 5 or top 10 back, the Josh Jacobs of the world, the Derrick Henrys of the world, and forget about Nick Chubb because he's in a class of his own, right? But go look at any of those top guys, look at the percentage of runs that they have that are for 10+ yards, and then go look at Najee Harris. Najee Harris is one of the worst players, I think 2nd worst player in the league for the number of carries that he had, the 2nd worst in the league in plays that went for 10+ yards. You can't look, if you can't live in a world where you're expected to run for 4 yards per carry, 4 yards per carry and 5 yards per carry generally happens, not because you literally go for 5 yards every single play, but because you're breaking up enough 10, 15, 20 yard runs to make up for the 1, 2, 3 yard runs that are going to happen as just a natural part of football. And so when you want to be a team like the Steelers who want to run the ball more than you're going to throw it, or at least it's equal 50-50, and you want to chew clock and all of that, well, you can't do that by going literally 3 yards every play. The math just doesn't add up. And so that's the problem for him. And that's why, like you said, like Jaylen can be that guy. And the quicker this team starts to figure that out, I think the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, we did this exercise when we compared Najee Harris to God, his name just escaped, Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I get it. Najee Harris is probably better, and maybe even not in 2023, but when you look at Dalvin Cook's longest run, it's like out of this world, Tony. It's like 70 yards, 60 yards, 65 yards, 85 yards. Those are his season by every year he's got a plus 60-yard run.
Yeah.
There's no way Najee Harris even approaches that. I think his was 25 yards or something like that was his longest run last year. That's not, and if they had that type of back, this offense really would be something to watch, because that would open up so much more. When you're pounding these teams physically and they get tired and you got a guy that can break one.
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
Let me pull this up real quick, because I did this before, and I'll do it again. This is breakaway percentage. This is the percentage of yards you got that were for 10 or more yards. Najee on this list. Where even is Najee Harris on this list? Oh boy.
Abstained.
Najee Harris, 13% of his yards came on breakaway yards. So 135 of his yards. Dalvin Cook is up here at 29%. So more than double. More than double. The only two players in the league that had a worse breakaway percentage than Najee Harris last year were Leonard Fournette, who is I don't even think he's in the league anymore. I think he's still a free agent.
He's not on a team. I don't think he's on a roster right now. No.
And then David Montgomery. Is he on a roster? He's on the Lions. Yeah, he's on the Lions.
Is he on the Lions?
Yeah. Who just, by the way, he's so good on the Lions that the Lions spent the 13th pick in the draft on Jahmyr Gibbs. So, again, teams like the Bucks and the Lions are admitting, like, hey, this guy's not a breakaway guy. The Steelers are going to sit around going, no, we still believe that Najee can make this work.
And then God forbid you say something on Twitter about Najee Harris, because
I get killed by
Najee comes all the time. Oh my God, they come out of the woodwork from every direction. You don't understand. He's going to be great. Blame the offensive line is the one I get all the time. It's wait till he gets a good offensive line. That offensive line in the second half of last season was a good run blocking offensive line. Granted, they weren't great overall, or definitely not in pass protection, but they were a pretty good run blocking team. He averaged less yards per carry than he did the year before.
This is the thing that bothers me the most about this conversation. Like, okay, I'm going to pull that up too, because you're like triggering all the things that got said to me as well. So Jalen Warren and Najee Harris ran behind the same offensive line last year, right? I mean, like that's just a fact. They had the same offensive play call, so you can't blame anything. I mean, we won't talk about in a vacuum, like let's see it all together. Do you know? So Najee Harris's breakaway percentage last year was 13%. Do you know what Jalen Warren's was?
No.
25.
Oh.
In the same offense, behind the same offensive
quote unquote bad offensive line. Yeah,
exactly. Jalen Warren last year averaged 4.9 yards per carry. Najee Harris averaged 3.8.
Mm-hmm. It's not even. It's.
Now I understand
that. Like, okay,
Jalen Warren only had 77 carries, blah blah blah. But this is. It's crazy.
People. He's generally a nice guy, and I think it resonates with Steelers fans, especially. Mm-hmm. They like him because he's a nice guy, and granted, he's a first round pick, and that's all well and good, but he's an average football player. And your eyes, believe your eyes when you see what you see. I mean, and then when you throw stats like that, the breakaway percentage, it's alarming, right? To be third worst in the entire league.
Given the percentage or given the number of carries he had, it is. I'm sure that there are worse players, but no one who had the 200 plus carries that.
Well, that's what we're talking about, like starting
caliber.
Yeah, he's obviously better than backup backs. I won't go that far.
He's not better than one backup, but
yeah, true. Man, you've got me. You've opened my eyes to the Jalen Warren thing. Like, I just always assume that Mike Tomlin's going to ride or die with Najee Harris. That's the one thing. For this season, anyway.
I mean, the numbers, by the way, we can keep going on the numbers thing if you want to, but I got them all here. Okay, so another thing people say about Najee is well, he's better at breaking tackles, right? Jalen is just an open field runner. Yards after contact, by an average yards after contact, Najee Harris 2.7, Jalen Warren 3. Like better even after contact, because he's just smaller and more slippery. The number of 10 plus yard runs. Now, again, Jalen Warren only had 77 carries last year, so he had a quarter of the number of carries, because Najee had 270, almost 280.
Yep.
10 plus yard runs. Najee Harris had 20, on 4 times as many carries, and Jalen Warren had 11. I mean, if he had the number of, just using that as an average, right? And we were talking about like 40 10 plus yard runs for Jaylen Warren compared to the 20. Like he would have doubled his number essentially.
If you put these stats on Twitter and left the names out,
right,
it'd be a landslide. Everyone would be picking, who's that?
Yeah, who would you rather
Warren
have?
character?
Yeah.
It's not even close. That's amazing too that he's an undrafted free agent and just they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it.
And I mean, credit to whatever scout that was that said, hey, we need to go get this kid because the crazy thing is, I mean, you and I were talking about him like he was like a day one of camp type, like, whoa, who's that? And yeah, it turned out to be pretty good. I hope I'm wrong about Najee Harris, and I hope that he ends up being a much better player than we're talking about him right now. But the problem I have for him is that the issues we're talking about today, the lack of big plays, is not something that happened to him in the National Football League. If you go back to all the scouting profiles last year, when he, or 2 years ago when he came out of the draft, all of them said, look, the one downside of Najee is he's not a big play guy, and that has become 100% true to the point where it's not even like he's an average big play guy, which would be okay. If he was just average at this, it would be fine. But he's legitimately bad in this category. And for a team that wants to live in this world, you are asking too much of your offense to try and go 15 plays every single drive because you are incapable of a big play in the running game.
It's not feasible like that. You can't run that kind of offense. It's just not. When we interviewed Rick Rapriche, we asked him, who's a former Steeler scout, what his finest find was. Basically, he said Jaylen Warren. He said Jaylen Warren repeatedly a couple times. Like he said, yeah, that was the one. That was the one, and he kept saying it, and it was like,
wow,
yeah, hey, take a bow, buddy. That's pretty. I don't know if he was directly responsible for it, but he made it seem as a group effort. That was the one they were most proud of because
he's been. I mean, he's only been on the team for like 17 games or whatever. But he looks. And he only had 77 carries, but like I think this kid could be the starter 2 years from now. I really do.
It's totally possible. One last thing before I let you go. Mark Madden, I mean, we all know what he's kind of he likes to get the Steelers fans going, but he brought up that age-old thing about Mike Tomlin. Is he underachieving the last 6-7 years? That's a tough one, right? I mean,
I saw this. This is the hey, why do we still do the whole we used to care about Super Bowls, now we only care about winning seasons. Yeah. Look, I understand the point. I will look here. Here's where I'm not on that bandwagon or on that kind of train of thought right now, because I think you have to separate. Like that was a mantra during the Ben stuff, like once Ben retired and you go into this new era, obviously you have to get, you have to give this, you have to hit the reset button on that talk. Obviously, you are not going to win a playoff game when your starting quarterbacks are Mitch Trubisky and a rookie Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we're still having this conversation though, like 2-3 years from now, like if we are getting into the end of Kenny Pickett's contract and this team still has not, either made the playoffs again or certainly should have won a playoff game. Well, certainly should make the playoffs, but probably should win a playoff game too. Yeah, like we can't go into Kenny Pickett's second contract and we're like, remember the last time the Steelers won a playoff game? It was in Kansas City 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. You can ding him a little bit on, the Killer Bees era and not winning a Super Bowl with that team. They made a lot of mistakes. And coaching and the players didn't help them because there was some knuckleheads on that team. Obviously, Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Le'Veon Bell. They were all talented. They were all knuckleheads. So it's kind of you can make the argument that Tomlin keeping them, semi-functional was an achievement on its own. Never mind winning games and stuff. But I go back and forth because when I hear people criticize Mike Tomlin, I get irritated. But then when I think, well, there's room for criticism there. There is room. This team, the playoff record in the last 10 years it's abysmal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, not to relitigate the Killer Bee era. I think one of the hardest parts of the Killer Bee era is that they just could not stay healthy. I mean,
that was it. In the playoffs,
the three of them only played finished. I should say finished. They only finished 3 playoff games together.
Yeah.
That's it. Because Le'Veon left the AFC Championship game after like 1 series.
Against the Patriots. I remember that. I definitely.
AB didn't play in any of the 2016 games or the 2015 games because, after the perfect hit, Le'Veon was already hurt with a knee injury that year.
Yeah. They went to the AFC Championship against Denver, and they had it was Martavis basically, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
He had a monster game in that game, but
I forget the kid's name. He was an undrafted player. He was a wide receiver. Yeah.
Oh,
I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I draw a blank.
But anyway, they just couldn't stay healthy. I mean, that's the problem for that team. They, as the Killer Bees, they're actually 2-1 in playoff games. They won against Miami and Kansas City, and then they lost to Jacksonville. But they put up 42 in that game.
Yeah, but they gave up 40 something. Nice 45, obviously.
That's right.
That one, to me, that Jacksonville game might be the worst loss in Mike Tomlin's coaching career. That you can't lose that one-dimensional, not very good football team. It was Leonard Fournette and a pretty good defense, and that was it. You can't lose to that team with the talent the Steelers had. You can't give up 40 points to that team. You can't.
Well, the fact that so outside of, the Chiefs in 2021, whatever that game, I don't think anybody's mad about, right? You lost to the. Yeah, you ended up losing to a fantastic. They won the Super Bowl that year.
Juggernaut. Sure. Yeah.
But the 2 playoff losses before that are Jacksonville and Cleveland, and they're both at home.
Yep.
Those are the things that deserve criticism. Certainly.
Borderline embarrassing losses. That's just a.
Right, and that's the part. The embarrassing loss part, because then you can go back to 2011 as well, or is it 2011? You got 3, maybe the 3 most embarrassing. Well, the Chargers game is probably in there too, but Mike Tomlin is responsible for 3 of the 4 most embarrassing losses in Steeler playoff history. Yeah, Tebow, real bad. Baker Mayfield,
that was brutal.
Real bad. Blake Bortles, real bad. What are we doing?
What are we doing? The Tebow one, that's another one. I had forgotten about that one. That one's brutal. And they were never competitive. Well, they only played the Patriots once, right? They weren't very competitive in that game either. The score wasn't that far apart, but the Killer Bee era against the Patriots.
Killer Bee era is where Tomlin deserves all the heat. Yeah, he deserves some heat for that for sure. Because, the fact that the Steelers lost in the fashion that they did, against Jacksonville was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, that's the worst one. They had lost to them in the regular season, right? And then they lost again in the playoffs. It's just, I don't know. That one sticks with me the most.
Yep.
And to do it beat New England in the following week, who knows? But they shouldn't have lost that game. They shouldn't have lost that game.
Well, there would have been so much. There would have been so much, talked about the revenge factor and everything in that game. If they had gotten past Jacksonville, I don't know that they would have beaten New England, but I don't think they would have got crushed. I don't think that team would have got crushed.
No, I think they were humming on offense. They never had an answer for New England on defense, though. They couldn't,
that year they did, though. That year they held them to 14 points. They won,
That's right.
That's right. Well, no, that was the next year.
Was that the year? That was the next year, right?
That was the next year.
I don't know.
Because that was the year they lost. It was 27. That's right. 27-24 that game.
Yeah.
That they lost. Yeah. Well, they won that game, but the refs took it from us.
Yeah, well, I'll never get over. We don't even want to talk about that. It's so aggravating. On the aggravating scale, that one's up there.
That is the most angry. That is the most angry I've ever been after a Steeler game.
Yeah, by far. Steelers game, that one, the Jacksonville game. Yeah, I think I've told the story on the pod before. The 2, my wife swears she doesn't even recognize me. The two Patriot Super Bowl wins against Atlanta, where I literally could not believe what was happening in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I was just devastated. And then the Seattle one when New England beat, because I deeply hate the Patriots. I deeply hate Tom Brady and the Patriots. So when they won that, my wife said, "You were a different person. You had to walk away and go calm down because you were just." It's I was bringing up some bad memories.
Yeah.
But anyway, bringing it all back. Tony, thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate it. We always like having you on the Steelers Sanctuary podcast, man. You're a great guest. And to the plug, you're still doing the AFC North, or are we taking a hiatus right now?
We are on hiatus right now. We are back in July. I think we're going to be back in the second week of July, just before training camp. So yeah, we'll be back there, continuing our player rankings. We're over on the defensive side now. Well, we still have to do wide receiver because all my co-hosts have convinced themselves that they're going to get DeAndre Hopkins. Spoilers, they're not. But
he stinks anyway. Let him have him. He's
again. Well, I would like him to go to Cleveland just so that dumpster fire gets a little bigger.
Yeah, throwing the log on that fire.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we're on hiatus right now. But you can check us out. We got all of our stuff on YouTube. AFC North Talk. Nice. It's a roundtable show all about the AFC North.
You going to training camp too?
I'm gonna try. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not a remote employee anymore. I have to go to the office 3 days a week, so it becomes tougher. But we'll see.
I had planned on going, and my wife booked a vacation on me, so I got ixnayed on that one. Overruled.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thanks a lot, Tony, and thanks for listening to Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. Until next time.